going to talk about basil for a minute. If you're doing any kind of gardening, especially as a beginning gardener, most likely you started with an herb garden. Having fresh herbs to use in the kitchen is a great way to get started in gardening. So if you've planted basil and you water it and basically do nothing else, in a month or two you get a basil bush like this, and it's starting to get a little overgrown. Base is even getting a little woody. So what do you do with it? By this time we've eaten more pesto than we thought possible. We've dried it, we've used it in everything, every recipe we could imagine, and we still have more, and if it keeps going we're going to throw out more than we actually use. This thing was actually covered with busy bees just a minute ago, and I went in to get the camera and they're all gone. Interesting thing about bees, people don't realize this, they actually, each hive actually has a curfew. The bees have to be home by the workers, have to be home. Usually they have to be home before the street light comes on, but anyway, varies from hive to hive and it's up to the queen. But anyway, the what we're going to make today is, oh, there's a few of them still on it. What we're going to do is we're going to make basil wine, and it's a great way to use. It uses a lot of basil, and it is tasty, and you can make it fairly easily at home. We're going to start by harvesting 4 cups of basil leaves, and if the stems are small you can harvest the stems as well, but with this plant here there's not too many stems left that we can use, so we're going to mostly be harvesting just the leaves. And this works with any basil, so this is green basil. We have a purple basil as well next to it that we're also going to make a batch of wine from. So right now we're going to trim up 4 cups and then head into the kitchen and show you the next step. Here it is, 4 cups of basil. This will be what we'll use to flavor the basil wine. It's a strong flavor, so you don't need a lot of it. With some other herbal wines you need much more, 8 cups or more. With basil you actually don't need that much, so no need to pack it down. It's very loosely in there. I just got done washing it, so it's a little more packed down after washing it and cleaning out a few of the leaves that were bad. So the next step is to bruise the basil. So we'll just empty it out here on the cutting board and take a backside of a spoon and just kind of rake it across to bruise it. That really lets the oils come out and the flavors come out. So I just want to make one comment on why basil wine. 2 reasons. One, just to do something different. I also enjoy brewing beer and making mead and making cider and so on, making fruit wine. But herbal wine is just something that's kind of unusual. It's not that common. So I wanted to give it a try, liked it, and so I want to share it with anyone else. So the second is a more practical reason. There are no sulfites in basil wine. So if you're sensitive to sulfites, which of course are a natural part of the process when you're brewing grapes, wine from grapes, or making cider and so on, you end up with sulfites, or if you add a Camden tablet to your cider, of course you end up with sulfites. If you're allergic to sulfites, then it could even be life-threatening. But with herbal wines, there are no sulfites, so it's sulfite-free. So if you happen to be allergic to sulfites and still want to enjoy wine, there are options. There are low sulfite wines, and there's some filters that will remove them. But the only way to ensure that there are no sulfites is to have no sulfites to begin with, rather than having a low sulfite and try to filter it out. So that's what got me on the path of investigating making herbal wine. Basil wine I've already done. We'll be planting some mint soon, so we're trying some mint wine. and have a bunch of other things planned. Hopefully, if I continue with the channel, I'll be sharing it all with you. We're going to bruise the basil leaves, and once the water is boiling, we'll remove it from the heat and drop the basil leaves in to make the basil tea. Here's the basil bruise. I just took the back of the spoon and just rubbed it all over just to release the oils in the basil. It's quite basil-y in the kitchen now. It's a good smell if you like basil. So we have 12 cups of water heating up on the stovetop now, and when that comes to a boil, we'll remove it from the heat and drop the basil in, and there it will steep for 2 days. So it'll just be sitting, so we won't show you that. I'll show you it when it's ready for the next step. That whole process of do something then wait, we'll see repeated quite a bit through this. That was really the hardest part to get used to when you started home brewing and making wine and mead and cider and so on. You do something then wait, and it's difficult not to be anxious. I wanted to speed up the process, but there is no way to speed up the process. The best thing to do is just wait. So here we've done something, and then we're going to wait. So we'll catch up in 2 days after this basil has had the time to steep and get all those delicious flavors into the water, which will become the base of our wine that we're making. So we'll see you in 2 days. It's now 2 days later, and the basil has been steeping in the water for that period of time. It's time to strain out all those basil leaves. Those can go into the compost bin so they can become food for the next planting in spring. So we're going to strain that out, and I know the pot's kind of overkill, but it was the smallest one that I had available at the time when I started this, so we're just going to go with it. So we're going to strain out that basil and ready for the next step. So we brought it to a simmer, and now we're going to remove the heat, turn it off heat, and we're going to stir in 4.5 cups of sugar, and then we're going to let that cool down. So 4.5 cups of sugar. It should ferment out. It'll be fairly dry at the end, and roughly 12 or 13% alcohol content. So if you want it higher, of course, you have to add more sugar. If you want it sweeter, but the yeast we're going to use should end up about 12 to 13%. The wort has completely cooled now, and we're ready to activate our yeast. You can see which kind of yeast we're using, EC 1118, and so we're just going to open the package and dump the whole thing here in this little bowl that we've drawn off, and let that sit for a few minutes and activate. So our yeast has been rehydrating for about 10 minutes. We're going to add that to the carboy first, and of course it goes without saying that everything has been cleaned and sanitized. So we'll add the dehydrated yeast first. Just a little bit left over in there. Just kind of swirl some around, throw that in there. Make sure we get all of it. And next we will add our wort. Once the wort has been added to the carboy, we added a stopper, gave it a good shake for a few seconds to make sure everything is nice and mixed up. Add a little oxygen to our mixture for the benefit of the yeast, and then we added an airlock. So at this point we're ready to wait. So we've done something, and we'll wait again. We'll wait 1 month for the yeast to work its magic and turn our mixture into alcohol, and at that point we'll rack it to the secondary to kind of clean it up, leave as much of that yeast behind. So that'll be the next step. So we'll label this, because once you have a few of these going, it's easy to get them mixed up and not remember which carboy contains what. So we'll add a little bit of we'll add a label to it so we remember what it is. Early in the basil plant's life, the mixture was green. This one's actually very brown, so it's kind of getting to the end for that basil plant. We'll probably harvest everything and make up a great big batch here at some point. But kind of interesting. Early on it was green, but it did turn to kind of a golden color at the end once it was fully fermented. So this time it's starting off brown. It'll be interesting to see where it ends up. So now we're ready to wait, and we'll see it again in about a month. This gallon jug of basil wine has been fermenting for 1 month, and now what we're doing is called racking to the secondary for further fermentation and aging. And so we waited, now we're going to do something and then wait again. So primary fermentation went on for a month, and we're going to, the plan is to rack it once, wait another month, rack it a second time, 1 more month, and then at the 3-month point bottle it. And so what we're going to do is leave as much of this sediment behind here. This is yeast that has gone dormant, fallen to the bottom. Don't think the alcohol content is high enough to actually kill the yeast. Maybe it is, maybe it's dead. I probably should have checked it, but at this point, but I didn't. We'll check it. We checked it at the beginning. We're going to check it at the end and see what the final ABV is. But the goal for today is just to siphon off as much of the wine and leave the sediment behind and clean it up. And we'll do that 1 more time and then finally bottle it. Currently racking a second time. We're at month 2 and it looks pretty clear. You can't see it on the video, I'm sure, but there's a very, very slight amount of yeast that's fallen to the bottom, so I'm going to clarify it a little bit more by racking a second time. And then we'll wait again 1 more month, and then it'll be ready to bottle. It'll age 1 more month in the carboy, and then we'll bottle it and then age it about 3 months. So once again, do something and then wait. It is bottling day for the basil wine, or at least this batch. So in 3 months we've gone from 4 cups of basil to a little under a gallon of wine. We just checked the alcohol content and we're sitting at about 12.3%. It you can see it here. It looks like white wine, tastes a little bit like white wine, but it's definitely has a basil smell and taste. It's there. Basil, of course, has a strong flavor. We're excited to see what it pairs well with, so we'll start experimenting with that. We're sitting at about 12.3% alcohol content, and so we're going to bottle it, but we're going to bottle it in these beer bottles. We have some wine bottles too. We have a few other batches of this basil wine coming along. We're going to bottle those in wine bottles, but I'll explain after we get it all bottled why we're doing this particular batch in beer bottles instead of wine bottles. So we're going to go ahead and bottle now, and we'll see how much we get. We ended up with 10 bottles, 10 12-ounce bottles of basil wine, with a little bit to enjoy right now. And it's perfectly drinkable right now, but as with anything with home brewing, it improves with age. So once again, we will do something and then wait. In this case, we bottled and then we'll wait. And the reason I put these in 12-ounce beer bottles instead of larger wine bottles this time was we're going to really space this out and have one bottle a month and just see how the flavor changes over time. So this gives us 10 months. We're going to wait at least 1 month, maybe longer, but we'll give it at least 1 month, and then try it, and then try one bottle a month and see how the taste changes over time, and make sure that we get the optimum time aging it before we drink it. So we have a few other batches of basil wine coming along here that we're going to bottle in larger wine bottles, and those we'll just put in storage here until we see how this experiment turns out. So hope you enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun trying something completely different, an herbal wine this time rather than a beer or a cider or a mead. And so really excited about this, and maybe in a year from now we'll do a follow-up video to see how this went and see what the optimum time to age the wine, this basil wine, is. So again, hope you enjoyed this video and hope you give this a try. So have a great day.